Dr. Kara Natterson is a pediatrician and the author of the forthcoming book titled Dangerous or Safe, which foods, medicines, and chemicals really put your kids at risk. So the health issue on parents' minds this fall is H1N1, or swine flu. So what is your take on this, Dr. Natterson? And you're the expert with access to all of the research, as well as the community in your practice, and as a mom. You have 2 kids of your own. So what are you doing to protect your kids against H1N1 this season?
Well, H1N1 is a strain of influenza. Influenza is what we think of as normal seasonal flu, and H1N1 is the newer strain of seasonal flu. And so what we want people to do this winter is really no different than what we've wanted them to do every winter in terms of precautions against flu. So hand washing, hand washing, hand washing. I cannot emphasize that enough. That is going to get somewhere around 85 to 90% of potential infections washed away through good basic hand washing. And with my kids, that means I say to them, go to the sink, put soap on your hands, and make bubbles. Okay, you got to rub those hands together in order to get the virus off. Cough or sneeze either into your hand or, better yet, into your elbow. Because if you sneeze into your elbow, then you won't touch a doorknob with all of your germs.
Right.
And then stay home when you're sick. Don't go to school when you're sick. Don't go to work when you're sick. I know that's difficult, but the reality is you should really be staying home when you're sick. So it's basic flu precautions, even though it's a new strain of flu.
I really like that. I think you're probably the only person, I guess I'm kind of in a bubble, that has talked about the swine flu as the newest strain of seasonal flu. So I think, part of the problem we're having is that the media seems to have hyped up this strain a lot more.
I have to say that I think we live in a world where the media kind of gets bashed around a little. If they hadn't hyped it up and told everyone what to do, they would have been criticized for keeping it under wraps. So I give people a lot of credit at the CDC and on the general media who have gone out and told people about this new flu. I think that more information is better than less information in this particular case. There are still going to be forms of regular seasonal flu out there this year. That's not going to go away. But just think of this form as a variant. It's the same basic backbone virus. It's just a new version of it. And we don't have immunity to this particular version like we do to the regular seasonal versions. So, and that brings up the vaccine.
Right. I was going to say, would you recommend getting the vaccine?
So here's the bottom line on the vaccine, and I think this point is getting missed a lot. It's the flu vaccine. It's no different, really, in structure and function than a normal seasonal flu vaccine. So when you take your kids to the doctor's office and you get them a flu vaccine, if you're going to go back and get a swine flu or an H1N1 flu vaccine, you're basically getting a very, very, very similar vaccine. This one happens to be very good against a particular strain of the virus, but think of it as almost the same as your regular seasonal flu vaccine. So it's not a whole new thing. You're not going into uncharted territories here. It's a very similar vaccine.
So can you actually get both, or is that double dosing your kids?
No, you can absolutely get both because the similarities are in the way they're designed and made. So we know that the safety of the seasonal flu vaccine is going to translate fairly similarly to the safety of swine flu or H1N1 vaccine, although there are still safety studies going on. The difference is the strains that they protect against are very different. So if you get both vaccines, you're getting protected against different strains. You're not double doing it. But I will say, in terms of when you get them and how you get them, I think it still remains to be seen how they're going to be able to be dosed. Right now we know you can get your regular seasonal flu vaccine and an H1N1 vaccine a month or more apart.
Okay.
Or on the same day. But the question remains...
wait, aren't those like two completely different...
Yeah, well, it's because this is how studies are done on vaccines. Vaccines are always studied a month apart. So I don't think anyone really has an answer to if you got a regular seasonal flu vaccine last week, can you get an H1N1 vaccine next week? I don't think anyone has that exact answer yet, but we'll be looking at studies that come out to answer that question.
Okay. And what would be the risk? What would be the unknown that they don't know? I mean, if you do get the 2 vaccines a week apart, what's the danger, I guess?
You know, every vaccine has potential side effects, right? So the most common side effects that we see from vaccine are shot reactions. The area around the site gets red or inflamed or swollen. Kids get a little fever. Sometimes people actually feel a little bit under the weather, especially with the flu vaccine. They feel like they have a little runny nose or a little cough. They don't feel 100%. So you're going to have that same risk of reaction with this new vaccine as you do with other vaccines that have already been on the market for a while. I wouldn't think of how we time these vaccines as adding a risk. The answer is just that we just don't know how the body responds when you give them a certain number of days apart. And we always like to know, and parents like to know.
Absolutely. So I have to ask the question, because obviously vaccines are such a hot topic. Do you feel like, what is your own personal approach to vaccinations? Have your kids gotten the seasonal flu vaccine?
I will tell you that my children are fully vaccinated. So my kids got their seasonal flu vaccine in August. And the reason why is that I knew you were going to need at least 4 weeks between seasonal flu vaccine and swine flu vaccine. And I wanted to make sure that they had their seasonal flu vaccine as early as they could get it. I say this with caution, though, because I always tell my patients that what I do for my children isn't what you have to do for your children. What I do for my children, I do because I've read every study and I've seen thousands of patients in the office, and I have come to believe very strongly that vaccines protect against diseases much more than they run any risk. But I have parents who feel very differently, and I don't discredit the way the parents feel, and just because I do it, they don't have to do it. I just believe in the science. I believe in the data, and my kids have been fully vaccinated.
Right. And how old are your kids now?
My daughter is 6 and my son is 4.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Natterson, and
thank you
for sharing your perspective.
Thank you for having me.